Sarah Mitchell never thought her morning jog would change her life forever. The 28-year-old marine biologist had always been an early riser. But that Tuesday in September felt different somehow. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves, and the small coastal town of Pine Harbor was just beginning to stir as she laced up her running shoes. Sarah worked at the Marine Research Institute, a modest facility perched on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The building had been her second home for 3 years, where she spent countless hours studying whale migration patterns and ocean temperature changes. Her colleagues often joked that she knew every inch of the old brick structure better than the janitor did. As she jogged past the harbor, Sarah noticed something unusual. 3 men in expensive suits were standing near the research center, speaking in hushed tones with Dr. Marcus Webb, the institute's director. Webb looked uncomfortable, constantly checking his watch and glancing toward the building. Sarah slowed her pace, curiosity getting the better of her. The men looked out of place in the small fishing town. Their black SUVs with tinted windows seemed more suited for a corporate boardroom than the weathered docks of Pine Harbor. Something about their presence made Sarah's stomach knot with unease. She decided to cut her run short and headed back to her apartment above the local bookstore. As she climbed the narrow stairs, her phone buzzed with a text from her research partner. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, emergency meeting at 8 a.m. Don't come in early today. Something big is happening. Sarah frowned at the message. Elena never told her to stay away from work. If anything, they both lived and breathed their research, often arriving before dawn to check on their experiments. The whale tracking project they'd been working on was reaching a critical phase, and every day of data collection was crucial. Unable to shake her worry, Sarah showered quickly and decided to walk by the institute anyway. She told herself she was just concerned about their research, but deep down, she knew something was wrong. The men in suits, Webb's nervous behavior, and Elena's strange message all pointed to trouble. The Marine Research Institute sat on a hill overlooking the town, its red brick walls and large windows giving it a welcoming appearance. Sarah had always loved the building's charm, with its ivy-covered walls and the old oak tree that provided shade for the outdoor lunch area. But as she approached that morning, the familiar warmth was replaced by an ominous feeling. More black vehicles had arrived. Through the windows, Sarah could see people moving around inside, but not the usual research staff. These figures wore dark clothing and moved with military precision. Her heart began to race. Sarah circled around to the back of the building, where a maintenance entrance led to the basement. She'd used this route before when working late and forgetting her keys. The door was unlocked, which struck her as odd since security had been tightened recently after some equipment went missing. Inside, the basement was dark and quiet. Sarah moved carefully, using her phone's flashlight to navigate between storage boxes and old equipment. She could hear voices above, but they were muffled by the thick floors. She made her way to a service stairwell that led to the main level, where her lab was located. As she climbed the stairs, the voices became clearer. Sarah pressed herself against the wall and listened. A man with a deep voice was speaking. The research data must be contained. The whale tracking system has picked up information that could compromise the entire operation. Another voice, which Sarah recognized as Dr. Webb, responded shakily. I've told you, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Mitchell are the only ones who have access to that specific data. They're not here yet. We'll wait, the deep voice replied coldly. And when they arrive, we'll make sure this information never sees daylight. Sarah's blood ran cold. Whatever Elena and she had discovered in their research had attracted the wrong kind of attention. She thought about the unusual sonar readings they'd recorded last week, sounds that didn't match any known whale calls. Elena had joked that maybe they'd discovered alien submarines, but Sarah had been more concerned about the pattern of the signals. Now it seemed their discovery was far more serious than they'd imagined. Sarah needed to warn Elena, but first, she had to get the research data to safety. All their work was stored on secure servers in her lab, but she also kept backup drives in her desk for emergencies. Sarah carefully made her way up to the main floor, staying low and avoiding the windows. The hallway was empty, but she could hear movement in the conference room at the far end. Her lab was halfway down the corridor, and she'd have to cross an open space to reach it. Taking a deep breath, Sarah crept along the wall until she reached her lab door. The keypad beeped softly as she entered her code, and she slipped inside quickly. The familiar sight of her equipment and charts provided little comfort as she hurried to her desk. The backup drives were exactly where she'd left them, hidden in a false bottom of her pencil drawer. Sarah grabbed them along with her personal laptop, which contained additional research notes. As she prepared to leave, she heard footsteps in the hallway. "Check all the labs," a voice commanded. "Make sure no one's here early." Sarah's heart hammered as she looked around for another way out. Her lab had only one door, but there was a large window that faced the side of the building. It was designed to let in natural light, not serve as an escape route. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Sarah unlocked the window and pushed it open. The drop to the ground wasn't far, maybe 8 feet, but she'd have to be quiet to avoid detection. She tossed her laptop and the drives out first, watching them land in the soft grass below. Then she heard the footsteps stop right outside her door. The door handle turned slowly. Sarah didn't wait to see who was coming in. She climbed through the window and hung from the sill for a moment before dropping down. The impact jarred her knees, but she was uninjured. She quickly gathered her equipment and ran toward the tree line that bordered the Institute property. From the safety of the woods, Sarah watched as more men emerged from vehicles and spread out around the building. They moved like soldiers, checking every possible entrance and exit. Whatever operation they were running, it was massive and well coordinated. Sarah's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Elena. "Thank God you're answering," Elena whispered urgently. "Sarah, don't come to work today. Something terrible is happening. Men with guns came to my house this morning asking about our research. I managed to slip out the back, but they're looking for us." "Where are you now?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice low as she moved deeper into the woods. "I'm hiding in the old fishing shack near Miller's Creek." "Sarah, I think we stumbled onto something huge with those sonar readings. I did some research last night, and I think we may have detected an unauthorized submarine operation. The timing of the signals matches reports of missing fishing vessels in the area." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "Elena, I'm at the Institute now. There are men everywhere, and I overheard them talking about containing our research data. Dr. Webb is with them, but I don't think he has a choice. We need to get this information to the authorities," Elena said, "but not local police. If this involves submarines and missing vessels, we need federal help. I have a contact at the Naval Criminal Investigative Service from my time in the Navy Reserves." Sarah was moving through the woods when she heard engines starting up behind her. Through the trees, she could see some of the vehicles leaving the Institute, probably to search for Elena at her house. She hoped her friend had found a good hiding place. "Elena, I have the backup drives with all our data. Where should we meet?" "Not anywhere obvious. These people seem to know everything about us. Meet me at the old lighthouse at Gull Point in 2 hours. It's been abandoned for years, so no one should think to look there." As Sarah made her way through the forest toward Gull Point, she couldn't stop thinking about how quickly her quiet life had turned into a nightmare. Yesterday, her biggest worry had been calibrating sonar equipment. Today, she was running from people who apparently killed to keep secrets. The lighthouse at Gull Point had been decommissioned decades ago, but the structure still stood strong against the ocean winds. Sarah arrived first and climbed the rusty stairs to the lamp room at the top, where she could watch for Elena's approach while staying hidden from anyone on the ground. From her vantage point, Sarah could see the Marine Research Institute in the distance. Black smoke was beginning to rise from the building. Her heart sank as she realized they were destroying evidence, probably burning anything that could connect to the underwater signals Elena and she had detected. Elena arrived 20 minutes later, looking exhausted and frightened. She climbed to the top of the lighthouse, carrying a waterproof bag with her own research materials. "They burned my house," Elena said quietly as she joined Sarah at the window. "I watched from the woods as they set it on fire. They're not just trying to silence us, Sarah, they're trying to erase any trace of our discovery." Sarah showed Elena the backup drives she'd rescued from the lab. "At least we still have the data. Did you contact your Navy friend?" "Yes, but it's complicated. Agent Harrison wants to meet, but she can't guarantee our safety until she knows more about what we've discovered. We need to lay low for a while." As they talked, Sarah noticed more smoke in the distance. The Marine Research Institute was now fully engulfed in flames. Fire trucks were racing toward the building, their sirens echoing across the water. But Sarah suspected it was too late to save anything. "They're being very thorough," Elena observed grimly. "But they made one mistake. They assume we only kept data at the obvious places." Sarah nodded, understanding. Both women were meticulous researchers who believed in multiple backups. Elena had hidden additional copies of their work in places the men in suits would never think to look. As evening approached, the two friends remained hidden in the lighthouse, watching their life's work burn in the distance. They took turns using Elena's encrypted satellite phone to communicate with Agent Harrison, who was trying to arrange a safe extraction for them. "Harrison wants us to stay put until tomorrow night," Elena reported after her latest call. "She's bringing a team from San Diego, but they need time to get here without attracting attention." Sarah gazed out at the ocean, where the sun was setting behind a bank of clouds. Somewhere out there, beneath the waves, someone was operating submarines for illegal purposes. The sonar signatures Elena and she had recorded suggested regular traffic, possibly drug running or worse. As darkness fell, Sarah and Elena settled in for a long night. They had emergency supplies from Elena's bag, including water and energy bars. The lighthouse wasn't comfortable, but it was defensible and offered excellent visibility in all directions. Around midnight, Sarah was keeping watch when she saw headlights approaching along the coastal road. Multiple vehicles were moving slowly, searching. She woke Elena quietly. "They're still looking for us," Sarah whispered. Elena joined her at the window. "Those aren't the same vehicles from earlier. Look at how they're moving. This is a systematic search pattern." The vehicles split up, with some heading toward the marina and others moving inland. Sarah realized with growing dread that their pursuers had resources and patience. This wasn't going to end quickly. As the searchlight swept across the landscape below, Sarah clutched the backup drives that contained their research data. Somewhere in those files was information important enough to kill for. She just hoped Elena and she would live long enough to get it to the right people. The lighthouse creaked in the ocean wind, a lonely sound that matched Sarah's growing fear. Whatever they had discovered in their innocent marine research had put them in the crosshairs of dangerous people, but Sarah was determined not to let their discovery die with them. The truth about what was happening beneath the waves off Pine Harbor needed to be told. As she watched the searchlights move closer to their hiding place, Sarah prepared for the fight of her life. Dawn broke gray and misty over Gull Point, but Sarah hadn't slept. She'd spent the night watching the search teams comb through Pine Harbor with military precision. Elena dozed fitfully beside her, still clutching the encrypted satellite phone that was their lifeline to Agent Harrison. The morning brought new concerns. Sarah could see through her binoculars that the search teams had established checkpoints on all the major roads leading out of town. Whatever organization was behind this had virtually sealed off Pine Harbor. No one was getting in or out without their knowledge. "We're trapped," Elena whispered as she joined Sarah at the window. "Look at how organized they are. This isn't some random criminal operation. These people have serious resources and training." Sarah lowered her binoculars and studied the pattern of movement below. "They're conducting a grid search now, working their way systematically through every building, every possible hiding place. At this rate, they'll reach the lighthouse by noon." Elena checked her phone for messages from Agent Harrison. Still no word from the Navy. Harrison's last message said they were 12 hours out, but that was 8 hours ago. The two women gathered their few possessions and prepared to abandon their refuge. The lighthouse had served them well, but staying any longer would mean certain capture. Sarah strapped the backup drives to her body under her jacket, while Elena secured her own research materials in the waterproof bag. "Where can we go that they won't think to look?" Sarah asked as they prepared to climb down from the lamp room. Elena studied the landscape through the window. The old cannery on the north side of town. It's been closed for 15 years, and most people avoid it because of safety concerns. The building is structurally unsound in places, but that might work in our favor. They climbed down the lighthouse stairs carefully, mindful that the metal steps had been corroded by years of salt air. At the bottom, Sarah peered through a crack in the door to ensure the area was clear before they ventured outside. The abandoned cannery was a 2-mile hike through rough terrain, but it offered the advantage of approaching from an unexpected direction. Sarah and Elena moved through dense undergrowth and rocky outcroppings, staying away from any established paths that might be monitored. As they traveled, Elena shared more details about her Navy contact. "Agent Harrison specializes in maritime security threats. When I described our sonar readings to her, she became very interested very quickly. Apparently, there have been reports of unusual submarine activity all along this coast for months." Sarah paused to catch her breath behind a large boulder. "What kind of submarine activity?" Drug cartels have been experimenting with semi-submersible vessels to avoid detection. But the signatures we recorded suggest something much more sophisticated. Military-grade equipment. The implications sent a chill through Sarah. If they had stumbled onto evidence of foreign submarine operations in American waters, it would explain the extreme response from the people hunting them. Such information could have serious national security implications. They reached the cannery as the morning fog began to lift. The massive concrete structure loomed before them, its broken windows and rusted machinery giving it a haunting appearance. Sarah had always avoided this place during her previous explorations of Pine Harbor, but now it represented sanctuary. Elena found an entrance through a loading dock where the metal door had been partially torn away by years of storms. They slipped inside and found themselves in a cavernous space filled with the remnants of fish processing equipment. The air smelled of rust, salt, and decades of neglect. "We need to find a place where we can see outside but stay hidden," Sarah said, studying the layout of the building. "And somewhere we can defend ourselves if necessary." They climbed a rusted staircase to the second floor, where the administrative offices had been located. Most of the rooms were empty, their contents long since removed or destroyed by weather and vandals, but in the corner office, they found furniture that could be arranged to provide concealment while maintaining a view of the approaches to the building. Elena set up her satellite phone and tried again to contact Agent Harrison. This time, she got through immediately. "Harrison here. Are you safe?" "For now," Elena replied. "But they've sealed off the town. We had to abandon the lighthouse and find a new hiding place." "I know. We've been monitoring the situation from offshore. What you've discovered is bigger than we initially thought. Those submarine signatures match intelligence reports of a major smuggling operation. But it's not drugs they're moving." Sarah leaned close to the phone to hear better. "What then?" "People. Human trafficking on a massive scale. The submarines are bringing in victims from overseas and distributing them along the coast. The operation is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and the people running it will kill anyone who threatens their business." Elena's face went pale. "How many people are involved?" "We estimate at least 50 operatives in your immediate area, possibly more. They've turned Pine Harbor into a temporary fortress while they clean up this security breach. But we're coming. Navy SEALs are inbound with orders to extract you and shut down this operation." Sarah felt a mixture of relief and continued fear. Help was coming, but they still had to survive until it arrived. "When will the SEALs get here?" 6 hours. "Can you hold out that long?" Elena looked at Sarah, who nodded grimly. "We'll try. But they're conducting a systematic search. It's only a matter of time before they reach us." "There's something else," Harrison continued. "Our intelligence suggests they have an exit strategy planned. If they can't contain this situation by nightfall, they're going to eliminate all witnesses and disappear. That includes any civilians who might have seen too much." The weight of that information settled over Sarah like a suffocating blanket. The people of Pine Harbor, her friends and neighbors, were all in danger because of what Elena and she had discovered. She thought about Mrs. Chen, who ran the bookstore below her apartment, and Tom Rodriguez, who repaired boats at the marina. All innocent people who didn't deserve to be hurt. After the call ended, Sarah and Elena settled in to wait, taking turns watching the approaches to the cannery while the other rested. The building's elevation provided an excellent view of Pine Harbor, and Sarah could see the search teams moving methodically through the town. Around noon, she noticed something that made her stomach clench with worry. Smoke was rising from several locations in town, but these weren't the controlled fires they'd seen at the research institute. Buildings were being burned randomly, apparently to cover evidence or create chaos. "Elena, look at this," Sarah called quietly. Elena joined her at the window and saw the same thing. Multiple fires were burning throughout Pine Harbor, and the local fire department seemed overwhelmed. Through binoculars, they could see people fleeing their homes as the fires spread. "They're destroying the entire town," Elena whispered in horror. "Just to cover their tracks." Sarah watched as her apartment building caught fire. 3 years of her life, her photos, her personal belongings, all going up in smoke. But worse than the material loss was seeing her neighbors running for safety, some carrying children or helping elderly residents escape the flames. The two women realized with growing dread that the systematic search wasn't just about finding them anymore. The criminal organization had decided to eliminate Pine Harbor as a potential source of witnesses. Anyone who might have seen the submarine operations or the unusual activity around the research institute was now a target. As afternoon turned toward evening, the fires continued to spread. Sarah could see that the criminals were using accelerants to ensure the blazes consumed everything quickly. The local authorities were clearly overwhelmed and possibly compromised. "We have to do something," Sarah said as she watched another building catch fire. "We can't just hide here while innocent people suffer." Elena shook her head sadly. "There's nothing we can do except survive until help arrives. If we expose ourselves now, we'll just be adding to the casualty count." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. She studied the pattern of fires through her binoculars, trying to understand the strategy behind the destruction. Most of the buildings being burned were residential, but some commercial structures were being spared. Then she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The fires were being set in a pattern that would drive people toward the marina, where several large boats were waiting. The criminals weren't just destroying evidence. They were herding potential witnesses toward a single location where they could be dealt with more efficiently. "Elena, they're not trying to kill everyone randomly. Look at the pattern. They're forcing people toward the docks." Elena studied the scene and came to the same horrifying conclusion. They're going to load people onto boats and make them disappear at sea. Clean up all the potential witnesses at once. Sarah realized they had to warn Agent Harrison about this development. The Navy SEALs would need to know about the gathering of civilians at the marina if they were going to mount an effective rescue operation. Elena tried to make contact with Harrison again, but the satellite phone wasn't getting a signal. Something was interfering with their communications, possibly jamming equipment the criminals had deployed to maintain their information blackout. As the sun began to set, Sarah could see crowds of people being directed toward the marina by armed men. Families were being separated, with adults forced onto different boats than their children. The sight made her sick with rage and helplessness. "We have to get closer," Sarah declared. "If we can't warn Harrison by phone, maybe we can signal the SEALs when they arrive. But they need to know about the hostage situation at the marina." Elena looked at her friend with concern. "Sarah, if we leave this building, we're not coming back. Once we're in the open, we'll be spotted eventually. Then we better make it count." They gathered their essential supplies and prepared to leave the cannery. Sarah made sure the research drives were still securely attached to her body, while Elena packed the satellite phone and emergency flares from their survival kit. The route to the marina would take them through the most dangerous part of town, where the fires were burning strongest and the criminal operatives would be most alert. But Sarah felt they had no choice. Too many innocent lives were at stake. As they prepared to leave their hiding place, Sarah took one last look through the binoculars. What she saw made her heart sink even further. The search teams had finally reached the cannery district, and armed men were surrounding their building. "Elena," she whispered urgently. "We waited too long. They've found us." Through the lower windows, they could see figures moving through the cannery's ground floor. Flashlight beams were sweeping methodically through the abandoned equipment and debris. It was only a matter of minutes before the searchers reached the second floor. Elena checked her weapon, a small pistol she'd retrieved from her house before it burned. "How many rounds do you think we have between us?" Sarah had never fired a gun in her life, and Elena's military experience was limited to basic training 15 years ago. They were researchers, not soldiers, and they both knew their chances in a firefight were essentially zero. "There has to be another way out," Sarah said desperately, looking around the office space for options. Elena pointed toward a window that faced the back of the building. "Fire escape. But it's rusty and probably not safe." The sound of footsteps on the metal staircase below made the decision for them. They had to risk the fire escape or face certain capture. Sarah gathered their equipment while Elena forced open the corroded window that led to the exterior stairs. The metal groaned ominously as Elena tested the first step, but it held her weight. Sarah followed, trying to move as quietly as possible despite the protests of the ancient fire escape. Below them, she could hear voices in the office they'd just abandoned. They made it halfway down before disaster struck. A rusted bolt gave way under Sarah's weight, and a section of the fire escape collapsed with a tremendous crash. Sarah fell hard onto a pile of debris, her left ankle twisting painfully beneath her. The noise had certainly alerted their pursuers. Already, Sarah could hear shouts from inside the building and the sound of men running toward their location. Elena helped her to her feet, but Sarah could barely put weight on her injured ankle. "Go," Sarah gasped, pushing the research drives into Elena's hands. "Get to the marina and signal the SEALs. I'll try to draw them away. I'm not leaving you. You have to. This information has to reach the Navy, or everyone in Pine Harbor dies." Before Elena could protest further, armed men burst through the cannery's rear exit. Sarah pushed her friend toward the cover of some nearby shipping containers and then hobbled in the opposite direction, making herself a visible target. The diversion worked. Most of the pursuers followed Sarah, allowing Elena to escape toward the marina. But Sarah quickly realized she'd made a fatal mistake. Her injured ankle made running impossible, and she was rapidly being surrounded. She took refuge in a small maintenance building near the cannery, but she knew it was only temporary shelter. The structure was made of wood and metal, and she could hear her pursuers positioning themselves around it. Then Sarah smelled smoke and realized with growing horror that they weren't planning to capture her alive. Someone had set fire to the maintenance building, and the flames were spreading quickly through the dry wood. As smoke began to fill the small space, Sarah understood that she was going to die unless a miracle occurred. The doors were barricaded from outside, the windows were too small to escape through, and the fire was spreading faster than she'd ever imagined possible. Sarah pulled out her phone and sent a final text message to Elena. "Tell my sister I love her. Don't let them win." As the flames grew higher and the smoke thicker, Sarah huddled in the corner of the burning building, clutching the backup research drives to her chest. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the sound of helicopters approaching, but she doubted help would arrive in time. The men who had locked her in this blazing trap had made one crucial mistake, though. They didn't know that Navy SEALs never abandon their mission, and they fight through any obstacle to save lives. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to breathe through the smoke, praying that Elena had reached safety and that somehow, some way, the truth about Pine Harbor would survive even if she didn't. The thunderous roar of helicopters cut through the night air above Pine Harbor like the sound of approaching salvation. Sarah could barely hear them over the crackling flames that were consuming the maintenance building around her. But the noise gave her a desperate surge of hope. She pressed herself against the concrete floor, trying to stay below the thickest smoke while clutching the research drives that contained evidence of the human trafficking operation. Chief Petty Officer Marcus "Tank" Thompson was leading his four-man SEAL team as they fast-roped from their helicopter onto the roof of the burning cannery complex. Through his night vision goggles, he could see the entire layout of Pine Harbor spread below them, with fires burning throughout the town and armed figures moving between buildings like deadly shadows. "Command, this is Neptune Team." Tank spoke into his comm unit as his boots hit the rooftop. "We're on target. Situation is worse than intel suggested. Multiple structures burning. Civilian population appears to be concentrated at the marina under armed guard." The voice of Agent Harrison crackled through his earpiece. "Copy that, Neptune. Primary objective is extraction of 2 female civilians with critical intelligence. Last known position was the cannery complex. Secondary objective is neutralization of hostile forces and rescue of civilians at marina." Tank's team moved with practiced efficiency across the rooftop. Petty Officer Luis "Shark" Vasquez handled communications and demolitions. Hospital Corpsman 2nd Class David "Doc" Chen served as their medic. Petty Officer Jake "Ghost" Morrison was their sniper and reconnaissance specialist. Together, they'd operated in combat zones around the world, but the situation in Pine Harbor presented unique challenges. "Ghost, get eyes on that marina," Tank ordered as they reached the edge of the roof. "I need numbers on hostiles and civilians." Morrison deployed his sniper scope and studied the waterfront through the smoke and darkness. "I count at least 30 armed hostiles, maybe more. Civilians are being loaded onto 3 large vessels. Estimate 200 people, including children. Timeline looks critical, boss. They're moving fast." Meanwhile, Elena Rodriguez had managed to reach the outskirts of the Marina district, staying hidden behind overturned fishing boats and cargo containers. Her injured friend Sarah was trapped somewhere behind her, and Elena felt sick knowing she'd had to abandon her to save the research data. But Sarah had been right. Getting the evidence to the Navy was the only way to save everyone. Elena pulled out the satellite phone and finally got a clear signal. "Agent Harrison, this is Dr. Rodriguez. I'm at the marina. They're loading civilians onto boats, and I think they're planning to take them out to sea." "Dr. Rodriguez, thank God you're alive," Harrison's voice came through clearly. "We have SEALs on site. What's your exact position?" "Southeast corner of the marina, behind a blue shipping container marked Pacific Fish Company." Agent Harrison, they have Dr. Mitchell trapped in a burning building near the cannery. She sacrificed herself to get me to safety. But she's still alive as far as I know. Tank heard this transmission and immediately refocused his team's priorities. You heard that, people. We've got a civilian trapped in a fire. Doc, Shark, you're with me for building search and rescue. Ghost, maintain overwatch and be ready to support marina operations. The 3 SEALs rappelled down the side of the cannery building and moved toward the maintenance structure where smoke and flames were billowing into the night sky. Tank could see that the building was completely surrounded by armed hostiles who were making no effort to fight the fire. They want her to burn, Shark observed grimly as they approached through the shadows. Not happening on my watch, Tank replied, checking his equipment. As a SEAL, he'd been trained in every form of combat and rescue operation imaginable, including fighting fires when necessary. The motto of the SEALs was simple. The only easy day was yesterday. Tonight was going to prove that motto once again. Inside the burning building, Sarah was barely conscious. The smoke had overcome her despite her efforts to stay low, and the heat was becoming unbearable. She could feel the research drives pressed against her chest, and she used them as motivation to keep fighting for breath. Too many people would die if this evidence was destroyed. Through the roar of the flames, Sarah heard something impossible. Explosions outside the building. Not the random sounds of things burning, but controlled demolitions with specific timing. Someone was fighting the men who had trapped her. Tank and his team had engaged the hostiles surrounding the maintenance building with swift, surgical precision. Using flashbang grenades and suppressed weapons, they eliminated the guards before most of them even knew they were under attack. SEALs trained constantly for exactly these types of close-quarters combat situations. Building secured. Tank reported as Doc Chen began setting up firefighting equipment they'd brought specifically for this type of rescue. Beginning fire suppression and extraction. The maintenance building's doors had been welded shut by Sarah's captors, but Shark made quick work of them with shaped charges that blew the metal barriers apart without causing structural collapse. Tank was the first one through the opening, his breathing apparatus allowing him to navigate the smoke-filled interior. Civilian located, Tank called out as he found Sarah huddled in the corner, barely conscious but still alive. Female, smoke inhalation, possible other injuries. Doc, I need you in here now. Tank lifted Sarah in his arms and carried her out of the burning building just as part of the roof collapsed behind them. Doc Chen immediately began administering oxygen and checking her vital signs while Shark continued suppressing the fire to ensure their safety. She's alive, but barely, Doc reported. Smoke inhalation, dehydration, possible ankle fracture. She'll need medical evacuation as soon as possible. As Sarah's breathing improved with the pure oxygen, she struggled to speak. The drives, she whispered hoarsely. Research data. Human trafficking. Tank gently took the backup drives from her hands. Ma'am, we know about the research. You and your partner are heroes. Now let us finish this job. Sarah managed to focus on Tank's face through her oxygen mask. Elena? Dr. Rodriguez? She's safe and helping us coordinate the rescue of civilians at the marina. You both did everything right. While Tank's team dealt with Sarah's rescue, the larger SEAL operation was moving into its next phase. Additional helicopters had arrived carrying more operators and specialized equipment. The criminal organization that had taken over Pine Harbor was about to learn why Navy SEALs were considered the most elite special operations force in the world. Ghost Morrison had maintained his overwatch position and was providing continuous intelligence updates. Command, marina situation is escalating. The hostiles are preparing to depart with the civilian cargo. Estimate 15 minutes before they're underway. Agent Harrison's voice came through the communications network. All Neptune elements. You are authorized to use any means necessary to prevent those vessels from departing with civilian hostages. Repeat, any means necessary. Tank knew what that meant. If the boats left Pine Harbor's protected waters with 200 innocent people aboard, those civilians would disappear forever into the human trafficking network. There would be no second chances for rescue. All right, people. Tank addressed his expanded team as they prepared to assault the marina. We've got 3 boats, 30+ hostiles, and 200 civilians including children. This is what we train for. Remember your rules of engagement. Protect innocent life at all costs. Elena Rodriguez watched from her hiding place as the SEALs moved through the marina with deadly efficiency. She'd never seen anything like it. The operators moved like shadows, appearing and disappearing among the shipping containers and dock equipment. Their coordination was flawless, each man knowing exactly where his teammates were at all times. The first boat was secured within minutes. A 4-man team approached from the water, using underwater propulsion devices, completely invisible to the guards on deck until it was too late. The hostiles never had a chance to raise an alarm before they were neutralized. The second boat proved more challenging. The criminals had positioned hostages on deck as human shields, making direct assault impossible. But the SEALs had trained for this exact scenario. Using diversionary tactics and precision shooting, they eliminated the guards while keeping every civilian safe. The third boat was the largest and most heavily defended. It also contained what appeared to be the leadership of the criminal organization. Tank made the decision to board personally, leading a small team in a direct assault while other units provided covering fire from the dock. The firefight was brief but intense. The criminal leaders had military training and equipment, but they lacked the experience and teamwork that made SEALs so effective. Within 10 minutes, the marina was secure, and all the hostiles were either captured or eliminated. As dawn broke over Pine Harbor, the scope of the rescue operation became clear. 217 civilians had been saved from human trafficking, including 43 children. The evidence that Sarah and Elena had discovered led to the breakup of an international criminal network worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Sarah Mitchell woke up in a Coast Guard medical facility 12 hours later, her throat raw from smoke inhalation but otherwise unharmed. Elena was sitting beside her bed, looking exhausted but relieved. "How many people did we save?" Sarah asked, her voice still raspy. "All of them," Elena replied with tears in her eyes. "The SEALs got everyone out safely. The boats, the submarines, the entire operation has been shut down." Through the window, Sarah could see Pine Harbor in the distance. Many buildings had been destroyed in the fires, but the town would rebuild. More importantly, the people who called it home were safe, and a major criminal network had been dismantled. Agent Harrison entered the room carrying a briefcase. "Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Rodriguez, on behalf of the United States Navy and the Department of Justice, I want to thank you for your courage and dedication. The intelligence you gathered has led to arrests in 12 countries and the rescue of over 1,000 trafficking victims worldwide." Sarah thought about how this had all started with unusual sonar readings during their whale research. She and Elena had just been doing their jobs, following the scientific method and investigating unexplained data. They'd never imagined their curiosity would lead to exposing such a massive criminal enterprise. "What happens now?" Elena asked. "Now you rebuild," Harrison replied. "The Navy is funding a new marine research facility to replace the one that was destroyed. Your work on marine acoustics and underwater detection has proven invaluable, not just for studying whales, but for national security applications." As Harrison left, Sarah reflected on the events of the past few days. She'd started as a simple marine biologist and somehow become part of a major counter-terrorism operation. She thought about Tank Thompson and his SEAL team, men who risked their lives to save people they'd never met simply because it was their duty. "Elena," Sarah said quietly, "remind me to send a thank you note to the SEALs." Elena smiled. "I already did. Tank said they were just doing their job, but they appreciated the gesture. He also said something I'll never forget." "What was that?" "He said that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you are afraid." "Sound like anyone we know?" Sarah looked out at Pine Harbor again, where cleanup crews were working to rebuild the damaged buildings. The town would recover, stronger than before, because when evil tried to take root, ordinary people had found the courage to fight back. The criminal organization had made a critical error in judgment. They'd locked Sarah in that blazing building thinking it would be her tomb, never realizing that Navy SEALs don't abandon their missions and they fight through any obstacle to save lives. Some fires are meant to destroy, but others forge strength that can never be broken. 3 months later, Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood in her new laboratory at the rebuilt Marine Research Institute, looking out at the Pacific Ocean where whales continued their ancient migrations. The sonar equipment was more sophisticated now, capable of detecting both marine life and potential security threats. On her desk sat a plaque that Tank Thompson had sent her. It bore the SEAL motto, "The only easy day was yesterday." Below it, in Tank's handwriting, was a personal message. "For 2 scientists who proved that heroes come in many forms, Semper Fi." Sarah touched the plaque gently and returned to her work. Somewhere out there in the vast ocean, new mysteries were waiting to be discovered, but she was ready for whatever she might find, knowing that curiosity and courage together could change the world. The whales were singing again in the depths off Pine Harbor, their voices carrying ancient wisdom across the currents. Sarah listened to their calls through her instruments and smiled, understanding now that sometimes the most important discoveries come not from what you're looking for, but from what you're brave enough to investigate when you find it.